going through a grading analysis, a should we grade it series that we're starting with. What you see in front of you is a big chase card from Pokemon. We do a lot of different categories, but this one we're focusing on Pokemon. This is from the Sword and Shield era. This is the Moonbreon or the Umbreon VMAX from Evolving Skies. When you think of all modern cards, this is, from Sun and Moon, Sword and Shield, Scarlet Violet, and Mega Evolutions. This is one of the top 5 in our view, and I think widely accepted by the collecting and investing community. What we've done here is we have an ungraded copy in our inventory. You can see that scanned in front of you. And we ran an analysis 2 days ago whether or not we should grade it. And so there's a lot of considerations that go into it, and we are going to go into it with you all. So appreciate everyone stopping by to go through this. So when you're talking about grading, and especially a card of this value, so like ungraded right now in a near mint condition is about $2,100. There's 3 different grading companies we would strongly consider for the submission, and it's really just based on liquidity, meaning the frequency these cards sell, as well as just generally just the market share of each of these. So you've got PSA, which is the 500-pound gorilla. That's the one on the left. You got Beckett or BGS, which is close to second, and then you got CGC as well in third. Now, when you get to north of $2,000 a card, some of these grading companies, in particular PSA, are value-based on what they charge you to grade. And as you spend more, you do get quicker turnaround times. And so when you get to the bottom line, the bottom line cost is really a result of a bunch of different things. It's what does it cost you to ship it, as well as insure it to the grading company, the grading fee, and then what it costs to return it to you. For PSA, when you get to north of $2,000, you're in the express level. And so all in, it's about $230 to get it graded. Now, you do get it back in 20 to 30 business days. So you're probably looking at, realistically, a month and a half, 2 months from start to finish to get your card. Moving to the next column, Beckett or BGS, all in, it's about $180 to grade a card of this caliber. It's a 45 business day turnaround. You can pay a little bit more to get faster. We were trying to do the most affordable, if you will, for these different grading companies. So $180, 45 business days from start to finish. So you're looking at, realistically, 3 months, and maybe a little bit more on BGS. And then on CGC, they're the most affordable of the bunch at $160 to grade it, and the fastest. So you're usually not supposed to be cheaper, faster, maybe in some people's opinion better, but CGC is definitely the cheapest option or the most cost effective, and you get it back in 10 business days. So you're looking at, from start to finish, probably less than a month when it's all said and done. All right, let's talk about what matters for this series of cards, Sword and Shield. The quality of these cards, meaning the print quality, tendency to get print lines, specs on the back, is really actually very good for the Sword and Shield era in our view. Really comes down to centering and authenticity. We feel very confident the copy we have is authentic. We've checked it against a bunch of other cards we have using the eye test and different things we can do. And so the card is pretty clean, and it really just comes down to centering for this one. And on the next slide, we'll talk about all the different qualitative things grading companies look at. And so really you're trying to be within a 55-45 centering, and you want to look at all 4 sides of the card, front and back. So when you start with the front of the card, you could probably tell it's a little heavy on the right side. And so when you're looking at the front, left to right, it's 48-51. So you're within that 45-55 guideline. We'll keep repeating that because that's where most folks want to be to get to a 10. When you look at the front on a VMAX, the border on the top is not clear. The bottom is. So this is where a gray area can appear. So we're saying not clear. If anything, it looks a little bottom heavy. based our view. And so we'll transition to the back. In the back of the card, it's bottom heavy. It's 44.56, so just outside that 55.45, which is a huge deal. So we'll keep coming back to that. The left right on the back is 47.52, so within that 45.55. So our view is of this card, you're probably 60, you know, if some grading standards get a little bit looser, but we'll say you're not 45.55 on the back, you're more 60.40 on the back, and most grading companies are a little bit more lenient, so we think we're okay there. Now the front, the left right is okay, but the top bottom, it's probably going to be, you know, outside of 45.55, which is a big deal, but it's not clear, so it might come into our favor down the road. So I told you there's a lot of things that go into grading. It's centering, it's corners and edges, and surface. Each of the grading companies puts out their standards. Now, whether how tight to these standards and subjectivity, how much subjectivity comes in, there is a bit of it. But centering is one of those where it's pretty scientific at the end of the day. Again, we feel pretty confident about this card in terms of corners, edges, and surface. So those bottom two sections we'll kind of ignore for a second and focus on centering. Now to get a PSA 10 in this box, upper left-hand corner, you need 55.45 for the front, 75.25 for the back. So we're good on the back. We felt very confident. And then the front, we think we're just outside that 55.45. So what does that mean? That puts us down into the 9 category of 60-40 front and 90-10 back. So we think the limiting factor in PSA is going to be centering. So we have a very high confidence level. Will be a 9 with a small chance of getting to a 10. So let's keep that in mind because we think we're all set on corners and surface. Now BGS is much tighter on centering. As you can see, 50-50 front, so you got to be perfect on the front, 55-45 on the back. So you can see how much tighter that is versus PSA. For our card in particular, we think a 9 is a maybe and probably an 8.5 because we're not even sure we're going to get to that 55-45 front. So, I mean, it could be as high as a 9.5. It could be as low as an 8.5 on centering just because of what's going on the front. And so that's important to take into consideration. So I'd say base case for BGS is probably a 9. Because what BGS does is they use subgrades. So they give you 4 subgrades: centering, corners, edges, surface. You're allowed to have some below an overall score, and then it gets factored into an overall score. So I think this one's got a very good shot at being a BGS 9. For CGC, again, very, very similar standards to PSA. And so they're almost, you know, pristine, which is their black label, is perfect. It's 50-50, but once you get outside the black label into their traditional white label, it's pretty much the same thing as PSA. So where does that put us for CGC? We're going to be at a 9, we think, under that. All right, so now let's get into, okay, what we thought each card is going to be, and what we think the return on our investment or multiple is going to be from putting the cards through the grading process. So let's just do graded values. We think a PSA 9 is worth $22.50 today, so that's where we would peg it with some upside to $4,100. For BGS, we think the base case here is a 9 for $21.50 of value with the upside to a 9.5, which is $26.50. And then CGC, we think there's probably a case for 9.5 because the centering is really the only thing holding it back. And so we think there is the ability to get to a 9.5, and we think we can do that because there's a lot of Moonbreon VMAXs that have that. So we think the base case is $2,100 with upside to $3,000. Now this is all great, but you need to know what your opportunity cost or what your basis is. So the ungraded copy is $2,100, and then you got to factor in the grading costs. So let's say we submit with PSA, we think we're going to get a 9. All in, our basis is going to be the market value of the card, $2,100 plus our grading fees, all in $229, which gets you to $2,300. So if the card's worth $22.50 at a 9, but you're in for $2,300, you've lost $79 from grading, which means you got less than a 1 multiple. Now, if you do get that subjectivity upside on that front centering, like we were talking about, there is a huge opportunity to make some more money. It will cost more in grading. So PSA, once you get past $2,500 in value, they hit you with another $200 charge. So it'll be all in like north of $400, but some people are happy to to pay that because you'll make $1,600 and you'll have a 1.6 multiple. So our base case is you're losing money by grading this thing. On BGS, we think the base case is a 9. So, again, $2,100 of value, $180 of grading costs. You're upside down $130, so you're getting less than your money back. So not great. The upside we think is not realistic, so we're just going to ignore that. Now CGC is a 9.5, is $2,100. Again, it was the cheapest at $160 to grade it. You're still losing money, $160 and less than a 1 multiple. So where we are is, we thought initially we were going to go to BGS because we thought the centering was going to hold it back. But once we dug really hard into it, we really feel like PSA is the play. There's a couple reasons why for us that we like PSA. One, we think there is some subjectivity on the front to potentially get it to a 10. So we think it's like a 5% chance we get it. 1. 2, it does have the highest resulting graded value at $2,250. So you lose the least amount of money, $79. 3, it's got the greatest amount of market liquidity, meaning there's a lot of copies out there, so it's always trading. So you always have price discovery. You're never wondering what the card is. And then the last thing, and I skipped over it, is insurability. So one thing that PSA has rolled out with is better insurance from when you ship the card to when PSA receives it. So we bought this card cash off a collector. We have no receipt or invoice for this thing, so no evidence what we paid for it. Now that gets really tricky when you're using other shipping carrier insurance. Now you can go out and buy collectibles insurance through a bunch of different carriers. That's a different matter. I'm just talking about you walk up to a UPS or FedEx and you're like, hey, I want to insure through UPS or FedEx. Here's what I wanted to do. FedEx won't even insure above $1,000 on collectible trading cards. So you can't even do FedEx. Don't even bother with FedEx if you don't have a receipt or an invoice. You have to go UPS. And then UPS, it's a little murky on how they reimburse you for a loss. This is where PSA is a game changer. So through their insurance partner, Cabela, they are now insuring cards without a receipt or invoice based on the then current market value. So you get full risk management coverage, which is great because there is a high prevalence of package theft between when folks ship a card to when it gets to a grading company. So from a risk management standpoint, that's great that we can be insured on both sides of the transaction, getting to the grading company and getting back to us, which is fantastic. So we're really loving that on PSA. And again, the liquidity is great as well. They're just more in demand by collectors on what they want. So anyways, that's where we are with this card. I really thought we were gonna likely go BGS or maybe even CGC, but just given where things are on this particular card, it came down to centering. The more lenient approach with PSA with a little subjectivity upside, I think, to PSA 10 made it a case for us to go for that. Now, if you're just value players and you're just like, hey, just going back to this last slide, you're losing money in your base case, don't do it. 100% agree. Liquidity is better when you have it graded, so there's no mystery of what the card is, so that's important. 2, you then can, once you get to a bigger portfolio, you want to actually finance your cards and things like that. Or maybe you have a loss. Somebody stole your card out of your house or out of your car on the way to a show, or lifted it off of you somehow. It's a lot easier to recover the value of your card if it's graded versus near mint. The insurance company, you'll just go, hey, I had a PSA 9 copy of an Moonbreon VMAX. I lost it, so you know what the price is. That's pretty obvious to everyone. Now, when you go to an ungraded copy, that's where the subjectivity comes in, and that's where you might have a little bit of a problem with an insurance company. So that's where we are with this particular card. We're happy to help out collectors on their journey of what to do and simplify it. For us, this one you know, although the value may not be there, we think the liquidity, insurability makes sense to go ship it to PSA, and we're likely to get a PSA 9. So appreciate everyone watching. We look forward to sharing more of these videos going forward. Thanks so much.